Okay, so it's 6:30, calling the meeting to order. This is the September 7th, 2022 WMGLD board meeting. Welcome everyone. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded this evening. Let's start with opening remarks. In terms of my remarks, we had no meeting in August, so this has been our first meeting in a little while. Couple things that have happened in the interim. Thanks, Tom, for mentioning that the second solar installation on Broadway Street has been, I believe, installed since around July 1st. They're still getting some of the infrastructure in place to track the generation, but it's up and running, so that's great. Second item is in the interim on, I think, August 16th, the Inflation Reduction Act passed, which is a lot of funding for clean energy and carbon emission reductions. So that will have implications for us down the road. And the last thing is, in the interim, that we've had the NEPA conference, and several folks, not myself, had attended that conference. So I'm excited to hear an update if there are any updates. And then the last thing is we did submit the Green Communities application. So there's been a number of events over the last month or two. And those are all my remarks. Do any of the other commissioners have reports?
Then I have, go ahead if. So as you mentioned, Commissioner Corsi and I attended this year's NEPA conference, which is the New England Public Power Association. There was a lot of great sessions around the accelerating pace of new technology, business models, and evolving customer demands, while highlighting some of the challenges and implications for municipal utilities like ours. And outlining some potential strategies for us coping with the ever-changing landscape. Some of the technology updates that we did receive were focused on, right here in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth fusion systems. So they're developing out in Devon's fusion power, wind and battery systems, some really cool technology coming out of there, including long duration battery systems that are air and iron. So I kind of thought there was exciting things that we could be potentially seeing on the horizon, as well as energy efficiency and demand response systems. We also got a hot off the press update, as you mentioned, on the landmark legislation, both at the federal and state level, that will help us accelerate the transition process to 100% clean energy targets. And I'm happy to go into depth in any of those sessions if anyone would like, either here or offline.
Okay, I have a report. Peter asked me to reach out to the Friends of Lake Quannapowitt. At the head of the lake, we'll be placing 2 EV chargers. It's part of a grant, and the Dave Polson's plan to service the 200-400 Quannapowitt Parkway. So I took copies of the plan. I met with Karen Fagler initially and Bill Conley, the former president. They suggested that I come to their board meeting, which was held at the studio at the high school last night. Made a presentation, showed them the location of the chargers and the work that would be done in that area on town-owned land, and how eventually we will service the complex. They had no real issues. They understand that we'll be starting work there in a couple of weeks, and they had some questions ultimately on landscaping and fencing, and they'll work back with the town on those issues. I expected to be there 10 or 15 minutes. You all understand that energy is probably the hottest conversational topic in the world. So 50 minutes later, I was out of there, and I understand they were squirming in their seats till 9:30 to get through their agenda. So that's all I have.
Nice, thank you for that.
Thank you for doing that. I'm glad that Pete thought of that because of the trouble we've had with them in the past when we've done things without going to them for us to vet our plans.
That we tried to have a little foresight this time, and I think the story was much more positive to begin with, but we felt it was better to share early and late.
Yeah, I approached it as a continuation of our initial effort when we removed the poles, that we would be removing 12 more poles down Quantapowhat Avenue. Bill Boudry is a board member of the Friends as well. So it's well received.
Okay, great. Any other commissioner reports?
Nope, nothing from me.
Elton, anything from you?
Nope, nothing from me as well.
Okay. Typically, we have a part in our agenda for town council liaison comments, and I do see our town council liaison with us tonight. Hi, Mike. Do you want to make any comment at this time?
Just a quick introduction. I'm Mike McLean. For those that don't know me, I'm one of the 7 town council members, and I'm liaison to the Gas and Light Commission this year. And I think it's going to be a busy year for everybody. As Mr. Corsi said, energy being a very hot topic. And I understand sometime tonight, you're also going to have an agenda item regarding ARPA funds. And just as an overview, you know, I would love to see the Gas and Light, you know, make perhaps a couple of proposals to town council relative to ARPA funds, and maybe we'll get into that later. I'm an attorney and a CPA, so I don't know anything about power and light, except paying my bill for the last 32 years. So I'm just going to sit back and not speak unless spoken to, but when we get to the ARPA funds, maybe I'll have a little more input. Thank you all very much.
I'd just like to
taking on the
invite you.
assignment.
Yeah, and if there's any time you would like to come for an hour or two, we'd love to give you an overview / tour. So if there's any time, feel free to reach out. We'll stick you with our resident accountant first, just to bore you, and then we'll give you the good tour.
You have no idea how exciting accounting can be.
That's what he keeps telling us.
Okay, great. Welcome. Next up, we have a period for public comment. I do see at least one member of the public on the call. Does anyone want to make a statement at this time? Okay, I'm seeing head shaking. Sounds good. So before we go too far, I wanted to ask whether there was any preference to actually take or move the ARPA fund discussion up, seeing as Mike is here and he has a special interest in that particular topic area. I know we have an agenda with a lot actually before that. So Mike, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I'll entertain discussion about reordering the agenda in favor of bringing that forward if people would like.
It's totally within your purview. I would, you know, I'll probably stay for the whole meeting either way. So we can leave it or we can move it up, whatever you folks want.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts?
Jen, I'll defer to you if you want to move it up. You can make a motion, or if you want to leave it in place, up to you.
Pete, do you have any preference in terms of your staff? I know some folks are hanging on to make presentations.
It doesn't really matter either way. Vinny and Joe are going to be involved in both kind of discussions. So.
Okay. So in that case, let's leave it as is and just go through the agenda as it is. Thank you for that. So first item is the Secretary's report and approval of the July 13th minutes.
Jen, I have an edit, and apologies, I did not get this in earlier. And it's just a clarification on page 13. The very first sentence that starts with new updates, inserting in new stretch code updates once ratified. And then at the end of the sentence there, and the town would need to vote on the specialized opt-in code at a future town meeting. And Sylvia, if you would like, I can send that to you.
You mind sending that, Tom?
Yep.
Thank you.
But that was outside of that, were my only changes.
Okay. I had a small change as well that I sent earlier today, but the board wouldn't have received it. Mine was page 9, last sentence of the first paragraph. The text here reads, P commented that one issue we are having on the regulatory side is that the DOR is in a lame duck mode and nothing will probably happen as far as support until the changes in January 2023. And I just recommend taking out the DOER is in a lame duck mode and then adding in the word nothing will probably happen as far as support until the new word administration changes in January 2023, because I believe we were talking about how the leadership was going to be changing at that time, and that's the cause for the delay. I just wanted to clarify that.
That sounds reasonable to me, John.
Okay. Are there any other changes?
I had a
Jen.
small one on page. Oops, I missed that.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I had a small change on page 6. The last bullet where it says section 5.2, the sick time back, that should just be buyback, just so that there's no confusion in the future. And that's all.
Any other changes?
None from me.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve these minutes with those adjustments if someone would like to make it.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, for the vote, we have Commissioner Corsi,
Aye.
Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Calais, aye, Commissioner Prifty,
Aye.
and Commissioner Warshall.
Aye.
Motion is approved unanimously. Okay, on to agenda item D, old business. It looks like project updates, and the first one we have is on the energy park.
We talked a great deal about it at our last board meeting. We did want to review the financials a little bit further, but that most likely should be done in executive session. I will say that the next major item is the easement and the idea that it needs to be a warrant article. I did get a draft from Mike just today though, so I haven't been able to share it. I'll review it and share it after the meeting tomorrow. And we'll begin the process now of publicizing and sharing. The next big step will probably be to pay a visit to the town council. I think we probably want to try for the second meeting in September. I don't think we'll be ready for the first meeting. So I believe the first meeting is next week and the second meeting would be in the on the 28th, I want to say. So 26th, I believe. So we're going to target that anyway to make a presentation at that meeting later in the month. We'll have a better idea of review of a potential warrant article, but we can give an overview of the energy park itself. It'll also give us time to have a more a nicer rendering of what it would the potential area would look like from a streetscape perspective. We've been working with our architect on that. So we'll have some information and probably some a better rendering of what it would look like by then as well.
Do you need at the town council meeting, do you need any members of the board to attend with you, or would you like?
I was probably going to ask Jen to join us, so I don't think we need everybody, but any support is welcome.
Well, I think we should be careful. We can't actually have everyone without calling out our own meeting.
Right.
So we need, if we're going to do that, we need to notice it and have an agenda for it ourselves.
Yeah, it'd be good if Jen joined us.
So I should say, please let me know if you all plan to attend, so we can make sure we do it correctly. Otherwise, if there's not going to be too many of us, then we don't need to go that route.
Well, I definitely won't plan to attend. I don't think it makes sense to complicate it and have to notice the meeting and have minutes and all that.
Ditto for me.
When's the date?
It would be the second meeting of the month. I believe it's the 26th. I'll send an email out on that. So.
Okay. I could be a maybe if you wanted a second member, Jen. If not, if you just want to attend, I'm happy to let you take the reins on that.
I mean, there's no precluding two of us from attending. So if you want to attend, that's great. Okay, great. That'll be a really good, yeah, I think it'll be a really good opportunity to collect additional questions about the project, some that we might have thought of and other ones that maybe we haven't thought of, in preparation to answer broader questions from the community as we start to talk to more individuals ahead of the November town meeting. So I think this is a great idea and opportunity to start collecting that feedback and questions early on.
Like I said, we're working with our architect, and we've already had a preliminary design modification and suggestion in terms of layout and our ability to kind of shield it from the street a little bit more. So we're working on that, and we'll share that as soon as we have it.
Okay, great. Any other discussion on this before we move on?
One other thing, if I could just add quickly, it looks to me like our meeting at Town Council towards the end of September is actually on a Wednesday as opposed to Monday. I'm not certain why that is, but just so you know, I believe it's going to be Wednesday, the 28th.
Awesome. Good to catch that now. I had asked Sherry, so I didn't catch that change.
Yeah, I may be wrong, but please double check with her because that's how I have it on my calendar.
The Sweetser schedule is also, that'll be the first Sweetser meeting on Wednesday, the 28th.
Which I will miss.
Okay. Well, keep us posted. As that gets scheduled.
I'll clarify all that and be sure.
Okay, great.
And just on, I know that the school committee had a presentation and a public commentary that I was not, but I did get feedback from a few folks that the energy park was well received from a feedback standpoint. No specific questions at this, that was directed towards me, but the energy park was well received both from Wakefield's high perspective and
And we have met with the school's design team a couple of times now so far, so. And we'll continue that as well as continue our discussions with the tech design team.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be questions, and I'm sure you have this covered about schedule, because it gets confusing between the high school and the Northeast Metro Tech building. They're on a little bit different schedules, and those will shift over time as well.
Mhm. One of the biggest issues that the high school has questioned is, would we be ready? And we will definitely, because the tech is more than a year ahead of them. You know, that alleviates a lot of their concerns.
Yep. But I think the more that we can make sure, like, I don't necessarily mind being mostly focused on the high school, but I want to make sure that the full schedule, including the Northeast Metro Tech, is in there. So there's kind of complete information. Because to your
Yeah,
point,
from the Energy Parks project schedule, it's really going to be driven more by the tech than the high school.
exactly. So, yeah. Okay. If there are no other questions on that, on to the Burns substation.
Yes, most importantly, Vinny and the team de-energized Burns substation this morning. So we are, it has been officially de-energized. There was a lot of work and a lot of conversions and a lot of project work, and I'll let Vinny talk for a second about that. Just all the hard work that the team did over the past, not just several months, but several years to convert that station.
Yeah, we've been working on this project for a few years. That combined with Wakefield Ave, I mean, it fed a lot of the downtown with 4 kV, and there was a lot of old infrastructure. So a lot of underground cable work, a couple big planned outages at night where we basically did everything all in one shot. And we are very close to putting it on the 2 new circuits that we are starting. And it's going to help us feed the west side of town with 3 circuits instead of 2, and feed Greenwood with 2 circuits instead of 1. So it's going to help us a lot with our load balancing and just general reliability, having new things instead of 4 kV stuff from a while ago. So yeah, it's been a good project, but it's really nice to get rid of Burns today. And yeah, it actually saves a lot of transformer losses too. They eat up a lot of power just sitting there, those old transformers. So all good.
The conversion work on the 4 kV is retired. Also, our greatest liabilities from a distribution perspective, those old transformers, both at Wakefield Ave and at Burns, were probably our biggest reliability liability. And so I think the work that Vinny and the team have done has been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just for Mike's knowledge, the Burns substation is, how do you describe where it is?
It's
complex.
Yeah, it's called Ballaster Street, which is right off of Albion on the west side of Albion, across North Ave.
Well,
So it's like
congratulations.
nestled. Yeah, it and Wakefield Ave are nestled in these little neighborhoods. Go ahead, Tom.
I say congratulations to you and the team. I know that you guys have been working on that for as long as I've been on the board. So congrats and thank you for the hard work there.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It's nice to have the old infrastructure away, cleaned up and looking, yeah, just much better and operating better.
Yeah.
Let me ask this clarifying question, please. So on the, when this is all said and done, because I know there's still work being done there, what's going to be left on that little piece of turf?
Probably a couple of switches for reliability, reclosers probably. And we probably want to keep the location for any kind of future distribution technology that we want to use there. We had originally thought about putting a battery there, and that still may be an option way down the road, but the next battery we purchase is better suited at the energy park. But that doesn't mean that there may be other technology down the road that we might want to put there.
Approximately how big is the piece of land?
It's not very big. It's
Like 70 feet by 120-ish.
yeah, because it would have barely fit the battery that we were originally thinking of. So that's why we're kind of held off, and we've moved the idea to the other location. But it's not large, but it may be valuable in the future. So we'll hold on to it at this point.
Okay, yeah, one of my concerns about a battery there would be noise, because it's just surrounded by homes.
Exactly. That was another problem. We probably would have had to put a sound wall up. So it's not the
Yeah, a lot
ideal
of-
location. Yeah.
No, those condos have outdoor decks, and we'd have a big problem if we had something noisy in their parking lot, right where they're sitting out on the deck for their morning coffee or whatever.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
mostly like the sound that comes from the battery is the cooling equipment, and so we don't know how technology will evolve in the coming years. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Great, thanks.
Maybe put one of the up and coming iron air batteries. Just discharge and recharge with rust. Pretty quiet.
We just got rid of a bunch of rust.
Yeah.
That was non-beneficial rust.
Well, I think Dave told me he's going to put a big tower of sand.
Yeah.
Right, Dave?
Yes, yeah.
Beach volleyball court.
No. If you fill a tower with sand, it acts as a natural battery. The silicon that it can hold like 5,000 degrees temperature, and then you can just heat off of that. They're using them in England now.
See it. The advanced technology might come down the road, so that's why it's a good idea to hold on to the site.
Cool. Interesting idea. I love it. All right. Anything else on that?
No, it was a good timing today.
Perfect timing. Okay, let's go on to electric vehicle programs then.
Yeah, so just by way of background, we had discussed this a while ago, and I think we've been trying to work on different ideas in terms of the idea of a time of use rate. And I think in prior meetings we had discussed the fact that we're going to require on new construction multifamily that they have a separate meter for electric vehicles, and then we would strongly suggest that for single family as well to take advantage of it. But we'll put up a presentation that Vinny and Joe have worked with Mark and Dave on in terms of the ideas around a time of use rate.
Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Awesome. So basically this presentation it's kind of threefold. It's kind of looking at the future load impact of the increase of electric vehicles over the next 30 plus years. It's taking a look at our current programs, specifically looking at our off-peak charging programs and trying to figure out the best way to enhance those programs. And then the last piece is we're looking for a vote on both the new EV charging program and the time of use rate. So I'll turn it over to you, Vinny.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, this here just shows kind of how many electric vehicles we have in Massachusetts, and we're number 12 in electric vehicle registrations, and I think we're 14th per capita in the US, so a fair amount compared to other states. Still moving slowly, but we all know it's going to take off a bit more later this decade. And we have goals for 2030, 750,000 EVs, so that's a lot of load. Immediately, that we'll see an impact, and this will be in the next few years. Transformer loads will increase. And we already look at our transformer loads, and we split them up as needed. We put bigger ones up. This will be really no different, but you know, a big concentration of electric cars could cause us to have to change the way we do things a little bit. But again, nothing crazy. And the only thing is transformers have been pretty hard to get a hold of, but we've actually done a good job of keeping ours in stock. And we have a ton of orders already out for the next few years, actually. So I think we'll be good there. And the biggest thing that could really throw us for a loop is a fleet coming into town or an existing fleet wanting to change to electric. And I use the post office as an example here, but you know, if you had all of a sudden 20 vehicles that all want to charge at the same time when everybody ends their day, that could have a significant impact on a circuit. And that's really not something you can totally plan for. It could kind of come out of nowhere. So anyways, that's kind of the immediate impact. And well, you see Burn substation in the back of this picture here. That's going to be gone soon. In the future, electric vehicles, when there's enough of them, winter load is going to increase more than summer load will, just because charging a battery in the winter requires batteries run out quicker in the winter, so people will have to charge the batteries more. So we'll see an increase in winter load. And I know I've mentioned air source heat pumps here too, but they'll do the same thing. Winter load is going to increase due to those. And we could see ourselves be a winter peaking place someday. Maybe not in the near future, but that could very well happen. But our circuits are well prepared for this, so no concerns really.
All right, so to take a look at our current programs, right now we have two EV programs. One is we give a free charger and then have people sign up for a 3-year charging agreement. The other program, which is I guess less of a commitment, is the Connected Homes program, which you can sign up and then you just don't charge during the peak events during a month, and you'll get $10. You'll get a $10 credit on your bill. So taking a look at both of these programs, so that since inception, 54 customers have received the free level 2 charger and signed up for the charging agreement. 16 customers have kind of tested out of that 3-year period. So I guess one of our big goals is to make sure that those 16 people and then the rest of those 54 who are still on the program shift over to Connected Homes at the end, so we can still see that the off-peak benefit. So that's one of the big goals with the current programs. So in looking at our current programs, I think there's an opportunity to enhance our programs, especially given that electric vehicles are increasing. So I think one of the questions that I was coming across is, how do we reach customers who already have a level 2 charger? Maybe they took it with them when they moved here. And right now you can go Connected Homes. So I think there's targeted marketing that we can do better on that side. But I think also we need to look at creating a program that can be plug and play with those customers. So in addition, like I mentioned, I think moving customers over to Connected Homes after the 3-year period is a big goal. But with Connected Homes, it's if you choose to charge instead of to refrain from charging during the peak times, you'll forego the $10 for that month. However, the next month you can still be part of the program. There's not really significant punitive type damages or anything that's really preventing people from charging on peak. And in addition, Connected Homes requires administrative work from both MWIC and WMGLD staff, and it's currently a manual process, so it takes some time. So on to the new program. With the new program, we want to incentivize residential customers to install separate EV charging meters. And with this, I think we're going to try to push for all new construction to be EV ready. So within that description, it would be to install a separate meter for EV charging, because that's going to allow us to implement the time of use rates. So what we're proposing is a 5-cent reduction on the energy charge for off-peak charging. And then on the flip side, if they choose to charge on peak, there'll be a 500% increase of the energy charge, which would equal right now, I think, about 45 cents per kilowatt hour. And I think with this program, we would require a 3-year minimum for using this rate structure. And in addition to the time of use rate, WMGLD is willing to offer $1,250 of value, and this would be the free charger of a $650 value, and then an additional $600 incentive. If somebody already has a level 2 charger, and they still want to be part of the program, we would offer a $1,000 incentive option for those customers.
And the rationale behind those 2 incentives is because you would have to spend money to put the meter.
Exactly.
So are you saying that if they participate in this rebate, they don't have to put in the meter?
No,
That the light department pay for the installation of the meter?
No. They would have to pay for it. The incentive would help pay for it.
Yep. Sorry
Okay.
if that was unclear.
I got a couple of questions if I can interrupt right now.
Sure.
Let's just back up for a second and let's just say that I got an EV and I signed up for the rebate, so I get $650. I get the level 2, I get the whole charger. But
Yep.
what is it that I actually pay over the course of 3 years? And how is that determined?
So as far as what? As far as like the actual rate that you're receiving, or?
Well, what is my obligation if I accept the level 2 charger? Then
Sure.
over the course of 3 years, I have an obligation to do something. What is that?
Your obligation would be that you would have to be part of this specific rate structure. So you'd be in that rate structure for 3 years to say, just for your EV. So the EV charger is connected to this specific meter, and that's the only thing that's connected to this meter. So what it would be,
I think Jack's getting confused a little bit. So you would still have the option to just take the charger, Jack, and be part of Connected Homes and not do anything else except participate in Connected Homes. Or if you choose to put in a separate meter in order to participate in the time of use rate, then you would get the charger plus $600 to offset your cost, to help offset your cost for installing the extra meter that would be required to participate in the time of use rate.
Okay, that doesn't help me. I'm not understanding something, because the 3-year program that you're saying, Pete, would be under with the proposal that there would be a 3-year program when I'm tied into the time of use rate, but the 3-year program is discussed on page 49 as if it's a current program. And,
There's two separate
and we've been-
programs.
Yeah, that's the program I'm talking. What is that? What is that 3-year period that's talked about on 49?
Oh, okay, our current program. So the current program is we sign people up for a 3-year charging agreement. And so what that means is during peak times, we reduce the output of their level 2 charger to a level 1 output. So that's you're in that for 3 years. So if you go to charge your vehicle at those times, it's only going to output a level 1 output.
And for that, they received a free charger to participate in that program.
So Pete, Jack, to clarify, I have a charger today. I have my vehicle. I get the charger from Gas and Light. I sign a 3-year contract. That contract locks me into the utility to when there is a peak event, the utility has the option to drop the charger from a level 2 to a level 1, which outputs, drops the output, or even turn it off, if the grid is under, extreme duress. So during that 3-year period, I, as a user, don't have the option to opt out of that. And that's the benefit that I'm receiving of the free charger. So the utility gets to control the charger. That's their benefit. I, as the user, get the free charger. After 3 years, or what Joe is saying, the connected homes, after 3 years, or if you have a smart charger that you didn't get through the utility, you can sign it up for the demand response through connected homes that incentivizes you to not charge during those peak events. So the utility will put out, peaks between 4 and 6 tonight. If I don't charge during that time, I will receive a $10 bill credit, and you have to not charge during all the peaks during that month. So if the utility puts out 5 peaks, you got to participate in all 5 to receive that $10 credit on that. Does that help?
All right. Yeah. That goes quite a bit beyond what I was looking for, but yeah, that's good. Thank you. So I understand then. So right now you get the charger, you sign up, you're 3 years, you're obligated to have your charger controlled by the light department, in other words.
Correct.
Now, I have another clarification I want to ask. When I went looking at EVs over the weekend, they come with something that they call a charger. It's not really a charger, it's a power cord.
Right.
So I can plug it in, it's got an adapter, so I can plug it into my regular outlet and get a trickle charge, or I can plug it into the 240.
That's considered
Now,
a level 1.
Yeah.
Both of them are level 1?
Correct.
The 240 is also? Okay. Okay.
Generally, the 240 would be level 2.
So that's what I'm trying to understand, because if I just have an electrician put in a 240 line out to my garage, not that I have one, then I would just plug that cord in and charge whenever I want. I wouldn't need the level 2 charger to be getting the level 2 output.
Correct. And that's kind of where the new program, where we're tying that charging into a rate. So there's a benefit, we're encouraging charging during the periods of time that is beneficial to the grid, and reflecting a discount, and then kind of penalizing you to charge during a peak event with a 500% increase.
Right. And so what I understand is that the light department is going to be asking us for a vote, but I don't have any numbers. I would want to see, if I were buying an EV today, choice number 1 is I don't even get one of these meters, because I just plug it in and plug in the power cord that I got for free, and then show me what I'm going to pay every time I charge my vehicle whenever I feel like it, because the residential rates are the same. We don't have time use residential rates. Then the second column would be, what if I went with the free level 2 charger, and then what would my charging cost be, with given certain assumptions on whether or not I'm charging during a peak of or not, versus The third option, which would be even under the proposal, I would still be able to get my own charger and go straight into the Connected Homes program without having to have my level 2 charger controlled by the light department and limiting my time. But
Well,
guess there's
you veered off there because you wouldn't be able to participate in Connected Homes unless we could control your charger.
okay, all right. So, but I still, for me to vote tonight, I still need to see the net present value of each of these three scenarios, but I don't see any numbers. You know, so
So
Oh,
you have
so I
the-
just wanted to point out.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to point that out as we continue with the discussion.
I think for, in my framework that, as an EV owner, for someone to sign up for me to sign up for this EV charging program, the incentive is for me to charge on the off peak because I'm paying less on a kWh. So, if the car takes 20 kWh, I'm paying that much, that 0.05 cents less than I would off the residential rate. And then, we as a utility want to drive behavior, correct behavior. And that behavior is, not to charge during peak. So that's when there is kind of that financial penalty to charge during peak. If I really need to charge, you'll have to, pay that. But the, behavior would be to charge off peak from a financial standpoint.
Well, right, but we all know you, Tom, and you like numbers, and you probably know what that penalty would be because you've done the number crunching. But ratepayers don't know what that is because they haven't created a spreadsheet yet, and I don't know what those numbers are because I haven't created a spreadsheet yet either. So I feel, given my history, with a whole career involved with utility rate making, I can't approve a new rate if I don't know what the bill impact is going to be on the customers. So we all know that if we have a time of use rate, there will be times when you don't have a choice. You have to go somewhere and you're going to plug your car in, even if it's during a peak event, if you need to get an hour or two of a charge. And I think that we should let people know, what the bill impact would be on them if they're charging, if they can, let's say they can do 80% of all their charging during the reduction period and get that 5 cents off, and only 20% of their charging is going to be at the 500% penalty period. And then when, what do the dollars come out to be? So, so that's what I'm just saying. I need to see numbers before I can approve of a new rate.
I actually completely agree with you, Jack, and I think I can help too with creating a quick tool that we can plug some numbers in and see what the range is, in real dollars.
We have that spreadsheet. I'm just checking with Mark
Okay.
and Joey if we have it available to share it right now.
Yeah, no, I was just letting people finish and everything, but
I
yeah.
also have some additional questions and comments as well. And I do agree, I was just going to ask if there was something that you guys could run some scenarios and provide those numbers.
Sure.
A comment, at least on the initial program, and I don't know if you guys have thought about this, for new contracts where folks are signing up for the free charger and just talking about our current program, could we put language in that says, at the end of the 3 years, that your charger will be automatically enrolled into Connected Homes? I think that might
Yes.
satisfy some of.
We're already working on that. Yeah.
Okay, so you've already thought about that. And then kind of overarching on the new EV program and just things, and I know I've brought this up before, is how do solar customers and V2G, so vehicle to grid, and house load, I'll take the F-150. One of the reasons someone might buy the F-150 is they want to power their home on a separate meter. They're not going to be able to power their home during an outage. by having that separate meter, because I'm assuming that separate meter is not a sub meter, or is it a sub meter, or can it be a sub meter?
Not a sub-meter.
Okay, so then someone would not be able to do that, take advantage of that with the, obviously they're going to have the proper transfer switch infrastructure in place. But I see two potential customers not wanting to do this is the solar customers, because they're not going to be able to take advantage of their production and placing it into their car. And that's going to be the 5 cents discount is not worth doing that work as a solar customer. So I don't know if we've thought about those things and how we address.
Yeah, I think one of the things we found, I mean, especially like Jack talked about it the last time we met, which is that there's many layers to this. So I think what we're trying to do is just create another option for customers.
Okay.
And it's not going to be a one size fits all. We're not going to be able to come up with one. So this is such a growing and changing field that we're just adding another option for a customer that may be able to take advantage of one scenario, and it might not be the same for everybody.
Okay. So this is just, so we're not going to, as part of this, we're not going to force folks to move into the EV rates unless they want to. So if,
Right.
say
I think we
Jack
need to
buys
leave,
his car and he's like, I'm gonna get, the free charger, and I'll commit to the 3-year contract for the peak demand to get the free charger. He's not going to be forced into the new, metering and rate structure.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the idea as we evaluated it was not to force one or the other, because there are so many different scenarios. I mean, you just outlined a couple of them, but there's many layers to it. Multifamilies, duplexes, like there's just so many different iterations right now that I think by us offering this, it's just another piece to the puzzle, that may work for some of the people. One of the goals really is, as Joe or Vinny said, there's a bunch of customers in Wakefield that didn't take the free charger from us and still have a level 2 charger somewhere. We want to try to draw them out, find them, and have them participate, because to the greater extent that we can encourage people to move their charging off peak, the better off we're all going to be. So, and I would say of the people that aren't participating because they didn't take a free charger from us, so at least half, I would guess, probably are indifferent to the fact that they probably don't care if they were charging off peak. They just don't know and haven't been bothered. So we need to find a way to draw them in. So the way to draw them in might be connected homes, or it might be, depending on your ability to charge, might be the rate, so.
Agreed.
Well, that's why we need to be able to tell people, to say, hey, maybe you took the 240 kV power cord and you're just plugging that in. But if you charge 80% during the off peak and only 20% during the peak, this is what it costs you versus what it would cost you on the time of use rate.
Right.
You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see the spreadsheet. If it's not quite ready, twink it and then send it out so we can kind of look at it and play with it ourselves and see what it would cost.
Jack, can you see the screen at all from your phone, or because
No, I
Joe
can't.
has the spreadsheet up?
No, I'm sorry, I can't see it.
All right, we'll send it out then. And I agree, there's iteration, there's a bunch of different scenarios that we kind of evaluated. And so we'll share the spreadsheet with you.
And then
That'd be great.
had two kind of other questions, and I know, Pete, I had sent this around, I'm sure the question is going to start coming up. It's come up in my scenario where renters are probably going to start to want to take advantage of some of these programs, especially potentially the free charger. Obviously now that, complicates things with landlord, who owns it, if the tenant moves out, all of those things. So just kind of thinking about that. And then the second one is on are we going to be changing the public chargers to reflect, I think, more on the peak side in terms of the rate increase during peak to, especially on the public chargers to make sure that those are not negatively impacting our load during peak events?
Yeah, we haven't really evaluated what we need to set those rates for, but we do need to do that on the public chargers.
Okay.
And renters is another big, iteration that, it's gonna vary almost on a case by case basis.
I mean, the one thing that we've done is we have Voltrek, and I know we met with Jack, and I think one of the items that came out is that there's many opportunities or many options for EV charges, many options for every customer, no matter what the situation is. And, we plan on using Voltrek to help customers. We plan on educating customers. The same as we do with the heat pump program, right? So to Jack's point, some people are new to the EV world and aren't familiar with it. And we want to be able to have an EV coach. We want to be able to have a contractor that we have or a consultant that we have that can guide them through. So our plan is to try to move forward with it, develop something that will help the people charging, give them options, help us design a system in the future that would be positive. But again, it's a long program and it's educational. So, we're trying to touch on all those components, but it's clearly, as Pete said, it's not a one size fits all. It's, we have options, and we're pretty confident that anybody that presents a situation to us, we can guide them through what the best option would be for them.
So are we defining when off-peak hours are? Are they going to be fixed, or are they going to be variable based on, what's happening on the grid?
I think we would have to define the period.
Okay. And if we played, where did we, for the 5 cents rate savings for off-peak, how did we derive that number? Did we look at 10 cents?
Joe?
Yeah,
Yeah, what we really looked at was the assumption that the transmission and capacity peak are driven by those peak hours, right? So we tried to do a calculation that said if we took that component of our cost out, then we would just have the energy portion, because obviously, there's an energy, a transmission, and a capacity portion of our energy cost. And so we assumed if they were not contributing to the on-peak cost, that we could reduce it by the 5 cents. I don't know, was that on the spreadsheet, Joe? Or is there?
hold on, let me take a peek. Let me see. Might be on.
Well, Joe, while you're looking at that, and I kind of get where we're coming here. 500%, 45 cents per kWh is a pretty big stick. And I would think that would discourage a lot from charging during those times. But I'm wondering if we could all, the carrot being a little bit better than 5 cent reduction. So I don't know if we played with those kind of numbers.
So can I ask a totally separate question? I guess I think, Dave, you might have been touching a little bit on this, but for the average customer, how are we going to be educating them on the various programs that are going to be available? I mean, here we are, we've been looking at this and we've been talking about all of this, and we're still not clear or as far as like ready to move forward with this additional program, right? But for the average customer that might not have the background that we have, how do we educate them? I mean, how do we tell them, hey, reach out to us or to the light department before you even think about purchasing an electric vehicle, to learn more about the time of use rates and options that you have from a utility perspective in regards to charging infrastructure and whatnot?
So it would be similar to the abode model, that we offer incentives and we we have a process flow that the customers contact us early on when they're considering what to do. And then we walk them through that. They talk to Abode, they hire a contractor to install their system. Well, it would be very similar to us. We do outreach to the customers. We have it on our website. We'd send bill stuffers out. We would have customer information sessions to talk to them about it. The same process that we followed through the heat pump model. I mean, I think that's been effective. So we would do the same thing. And I think that would be.
I think if you look at EVs, we've been probably out in front of the EV discussion for the past several. I don't know how, Sylvia, how many years have we been doing farmers markets where we've had an electric vehicle at the farmers market, and so we've been out in front of it. And so I think what we, and we've had at least 50 customers that have participated in the free charger program. So I think it's just continuing to reach out with all our different touch points, Facebook, farmers markets, Wakefield 101, all the different places that we reach out and touch the customers. And again, we're just going to keep, touting our expansion of our offerings. We have Voltrek as a consultant now, an expert. We have, potentially at some point we'll approve a time of use rate, so those are all the different ways we'll reach out and touch them. Again, it's a little more like heat pumps, it's a little more complicated than just saying we're going to offer a $50 rebate on an energy efficient refrigerator. It's a little more complicated. So it's not going to be that simple, but it's going to be more consultative than, a straight ad.
And Jack, I know you can't see the screen, but Joe's got a spreadsheet up that's showing some best case and conservative. So if I'm reading this correctly, best case, with the level 2 charger, the peak savings here, if someone was to not, to not charge on peak, charge only on off peak, the savings over our current rate is $1,200 and change. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, so basically the approach that I took to this is it's kind of, I did a couple different scenarios. One, I was looking at, there's a case study in Lincoln, Nebraska that has some really good data about charging, what times people did it, and there was a bunch of participants in that. So they found that on average, all electric vehicles will charge almost 2,900 kWh. I mean, the ranges were a little bit wide because Teslas, and that's where you get down here, like Teslas can use, or the larger range vehicles are going to use more kWh for charging. So I guess in designing the program, we're trying to kind of balance out the customer benefit with our benefit as well. So that, but I mean, it's a win-win either way as the years go on. It's, if they charge off peak, they're going to save a lot of money, and then we're going to save on the avoided cost side of things. So I guess if the way I'm looking at, the way you look at it is, the best case would be if 100% of the people, or if that one person was 100% going to charge at that time at full output during every peak and the annual peak of the year. So that's assuming that there's a 7 kW output at that snapshot. This is every month combined. So it's monthly, but it's 12 months rolled up into one. That's the annual. So that would be if a customer was perfect on they were going to previously charge at that time and this and that, because at the end of the day, we're trying to incentivize people to do something that they were doing that now. So that's kind of the framework to kind of look at it. So additionally, and I can put this up on the screen as well, there's a really interesting graph that shows when the case study people were charging, and it shows at one time during the peak hours that 20% of the people in the case study were charging at that point, which sounds kind of crazy, but people charge at different times, or maybe they get started at different times. So that's where I discounted by 80% to say well, maybe these people wouldn't have been charging at that point anyway, and so they're just getting the benefit of something that they never charged on peak anyway. So that's saying, well, we shouldn't say that we're going to benefit this much if this person already wasn't going to charge at that point, or maybe they were on vacation, or you don't know. So that's where we get to this point. And then it's looking at, so they're going to save 5 cents per kilowatt hour based on, that's the new program. So the more kWh they use, obviously the shorter the payback, and it starts inching the benefits closer together. Like, so if someone had 2 EVs, they're gonna benefit. Let's say they have 2 Teslas and 1 charger. They're gonna benefit extremely more than we are. They're gonna probably benefit about double that we are. So it's trying to find that sweet spot to say, we want both sides to benefit significantly, and I think both sides can with this program. So hopefully that all makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I do, to Elton's point, I think we're gonna have a bit of an education, especially for folks that are considering an EV and not necessarily driving one today. And I'd even argue that folks that do have an EV, a good percentage of them probably don't know what peak and off-peak is from a rate perspective, and why those things are important to us.
Yeah, I mean, that part's definitely gonna take the most education, because we've had a flat rate forever. We've never had a time of use rate. So that's an educational component to customers. But then I think at the highest level, the simplest thing, it was on one of the slides in Joe's presentation, which was the fact that at the end of the day, if you participate in something like this, you're gonna save about 3 cents a mile, on average, between the current cost of where.
Well, actually, you're gonna save.
Next slide.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Next slide. Yeah.
Not this one. It's actually the next one after this.
Okay,
But
yeah.
it brings you down to a 3 cent per mile EV charging cost, and in comparison to 14 cents per mile of internal combustion with the current gas prices. And then also,
So it's 11 cents per mile savings.
I would put on here, just so that as a comparison, what's an EV charge, the percents under our flat rates.
so that would be 5 cents. So
Okay. And then, as the, the kind of the stick, what that is under the peak rate. I think having those numbers here are impactful as well, because, to Pete's point, people think about, on a per mile basis, we're all conditioned that way. What's my MPG when I'm talking about an ICE vehicle? How what does that dollar get me for the number of miles? So, if we kind of start to break that down in those different categories, I think that will help with some of the educational parts.
yeah, no, that makes sense.
So I think our plan is that we can, based on this discussion, we'll share the spreadsheets that we use to create this presentation with you guys. So, and we can, with something like this, I wasn't really expecting that we would have a vote on this tonight. There's discussing it, digesting it. And again, I think the most important element to this is understanding that we're not trying to flip everybody over to this, but add another offering that would help, that might make sense for a segment of the population and would still benefit both us and them, and again, that's the data behind the spreadsheets. So we'll share the spreadsheets with you, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions off of those. And then, we can keep discussing it.
One thing and just focusing on the vehicle to grid under this program, would we if, as these vehicles come online that are V2G capable, would we also be paying that 45 cents as an adder with their discharging to us if we're dispatching them?
I think the to grid stuff, we're gonna have to be very careful with, because we have a solar rate, so we already have a mechanism for what if customers actually load back onto the grid, how we incent and pay them. So,
And that was, I just want to think about, because if, say, someone is on, and I don't know, will we have the ability to control that? That's just kind of my thought is all of a sudden, someone has a V2G capable vehicle, and they dispatch, outside of our control, back onto the grid, during a peak time, and we're not controlling that dispatch. So I just want to kind of think about the technical capabilities there and the impacts, what we can and cannot control.
there's a safety component to that too. So we
Yeah.
have, there's some layers to the vehicle to grid stuff as well.
Yeah, I think, obviously there's got to be at least a transfer switch at a very basic.
Right.
But I just want to kind of think about to make sure that we have guardrails in place, from at least a billing perspective.
So I think this is a good first step towards this. There's a lot of data here. We'll share the rest of it from the spreadsheets that were behind this, and we can keep discussing it. If there's any other questions tonight, if not, I think looking in more detail at the spreadsheets, and then if individually you just get back to me with questions, we can prepare like a follow-up next month and keep discussing it a little bit further.
Yeah,
I
can we
still
go
have-
through the last slides?
Say that again?
I was just gonna say, can we not end this discussion before we go through the last few slides?
Okay.
Can I just ask one or two clarifying questions? Because I'm still really confused. I'm so
Sure.
sorry. So let's just name their current program, which I would call EV load curtailment or something like that. Is that reasonable? So right now we have EV load curtailment and we have connected homes. Are we moving from EV load curtailment to time of use? So we would have connected homes and time of use, or are we moving to all three?
All right, well, I think the suggestion that Tom made is one we were already working on, which is basically the initial charger and then the connected home's basically gonna become one. You're gonna start with the charger for free, and then after a couple of years or 3 years, you'll be part of connected homes automatically unless you opt out. So it will really become two programs.
And then Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, there are, what is it, the Blink, or there's one other charger outside of the charge point one that connected homes can connect to. So Jen, if someone already has one, they purchased it on their own, they moved into town, they could subscribe it to the connected homes and get that $10 bill credit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we basically will be having three, like people could start in EV load curtailment, move to connected homes, and then move to TOU or something like that. So is TOU it's not a replacement for connected homes? They can do both at the same
No,
time.
that was the whole point, where it's a different option depending on the situation that you're in. So you could start out, again, if you go back a couple slides, Joe,
Sure.
it's actually on that one. Never mind. I'm sorry. Go back to where
This
you
one?
just were. Yeah. So you could start out on the time of use. If you were going to install a separate meter, that's where we were talking about giving you a different incentive. It would be the charger itself plus $600 to help defray the cost of the extra meter. Or if you already brought your own level 2 charger with you, $1,000 to defray the cost of the extra meter.
Okay, so I'm still a little bit confused as to all the different scenarios that people can use to go through these programs. I guess that's where I'm getting stuck.
There's really going to be only two. There's the separate meter time of use option, or there's going to be the connected homes will basically incent you to not charge during those peak
In other
times.
words, it's the same thing we have now, except that if you take the meter, you automatically will get on time of use.
Correct.
Otherwise, go to,
So it's really only two options. Again, as Tom said, we're already working on modifying the free charger program we currently have, because it doesn't make sense to not move them automatically over to Connected Homes. So that'll
this is
be
part of
option A. And option B would
Yeah.
be to do it from the start and do a time of use.
Okay, and you would get one or the other incentives, but not both, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
So, yeah, and
But
we're clarifying that if someone does do the TOU with a separate meter, even if they have a charger that is capable of being connected to Connected Homes, they would not be eligible for that $10 per month incentive if they meet all the peaks. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Would we control
can't-
them still if someone wanted to? I'm just thinking kind of proactively, if I had a connected, so that, if I signed up, while I wouldn't get the bill credit, but kind of not, as a kind of security, saying, I don't want to think about it if it's under peak, the charger's at level 1, I'm not charging. The utility.
Well, again, that most of the chargers are smart enough that you could program that yourself. The whole
Okay.
idea of the time of use rate was that you're making your own decisions, and if you decide to charge between 4 and 8, the incentive or disincentive is the 5 cents versus the 45 cents.
Right. I was just thinking more around, we don't have fixed hours, it's more dynamic based on the grid. That might be a little bit more challenging, because we definitely have to notify folks, so they can make that decision.
Well, I don't think this isn't gonna be a moving rate. It's gonna be the same. It's not gonna be dynamic. We
I
don't
mean,
have,
that rate, the hours, are
I don't
we
think
always gonna
even
say
if-
4 to 8 is the peak?
yeah, we're gonna
or-
define the peak, whether that's
Okay.
4 to 8 or 5 to 9 or whatever the number, it would be predefined.
Okay,
Because we don't have the capability to make that dynamic.
all right. Thank you for clarifying that.
so just to clarify though, Connected Homes is or is not dynamic?
Connected Homes is only dynamic to the extent that there is software through MWEC that takes the action. Or if you, actually, the meter we control today, the charger we control for the first 3 years is controlled through the internet connection to the charger. Going forward, you really do have a choice also. You could choose to not participate in a given month and you wouldn't get the $10 a month incentive. As Tom was saying earlier, that Connected Homes is the same as if you had your air source heat pump on it as well through the thermostat. Connected Homes is bigger than just EV chargers.
And Connected Homes has a set hours for the
Yeah.
peak, has a set window.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
you get
guess-
a notification, Jen, so, you'll get a notification several hours up to a day before saying that, hey, a peak event's coming. The event will go from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Tonight, and then it will control your thermostats, your EV charger. So it's all kind of the Connected Homes is all encompassing in that aspect. So the hours are dynamic. Your choice is whether to participate or not. You get the incentive if you participate in all of those events for the month.
right. So really, really important that the word peak is defined very differently for these two programs, I think. Whereas one is fewer hours and the hours can change, and the other is more hours and the hours are fixed. So we're gonna have to work through that, but I think that's kind of the design is very different between the two programs.
To an extent, but the principles are very much the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think TOU is more hours and Connected Homes is like probably a couple hours within the hours defined by TOU, something like that, a smaller subset of hours. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to communicate as well. Okay, and then on the TOU, if it's fixed, then I guess you don't really get a notification, or you don't get protection or anything like that. You know, nobody says, hey, by the way, you're entering your peak time. Like, you sign it. It's the same thing as the curtailment program right now, where you sign up in advance and you sign and you say, I understand, right, that these are what we consider to be peak, and I take it on as my responsibility to avoid them, or else nothing's going to pop up and say, do you give permission 3 times over to charge now, or will it? What are the protections on that?
For the time of use,
Correct.
the rate is the protection. You're gonna, if you program your charger to only charge off peak, you will save 5 cents every kilowatt hour. And if you don't, you'll pay 45 cents.
Okay. But there's no there's no additional kind of reminder or anything like that.
No, because again, we're not gonna make that variable.
Okay. That's helpful.
But again, the reason we're offering multiple different options is because depending on your lifestyle and what you use your EV for, it might be simply that it's my commuter car, I program it to never charge between 4 and 8, and I get 5 cents off every other kilowatt hour because I'm only going to charge it starting at 8 o'clock till morning every single day, and I get that savings every single day.
Yep, I follow now. And yeah, I think some scenarios of that are going to be really helpful.
So Joe, was there another couple of slides?
Yeah, I mean, we went through a lot of it, but we'll see what's left.
Yeah, we kind of left off on 8. We were talking about where we talked about the payback, because I have a question on page 8, which is 52 in the package.
Sure, yeah. Yep.
So on this payback period, 5.6 years payback, that's assuming 100% of the charging is during the low rate period?
Yep.
Okay. Now, the other big question here is that the meter is costing about $2,000, and that's 100% charged to the customer. I've never heard of an electric company ever in my life charging a customer for a meter.
It's not the meter, it's the socket. We're not really charging for the meter. That's probably not the right. It's the estimated cost for you to add the second socket. We're not
That's the
charging.
electrician give. Are we running a new aerial, or is this gonna have to be off of?
It would be off of the same line. It would be split.
All right, so Jack, and correct me if I'm wrong. So for example, if I wanted to change this, I'd hire an electrician at, my meter socket. I'd change that from a single socket to a dual socket or something, equivalent, and then wiring, the electrician wiring that all the way over to where my vehicle would be parked. And that's what the estimated cost of the $2,000 is.
Correct.
That's an estimated cost? That's not a fixed cost as part of the program?
No.
That's gonna be, I would think that's variable.
It's variable because it would depend on your specific location. Tom's house might be completely different from.
We validate.
Let me ask you.
Oh, go ahead.
If I get this level 2 charger, it's free up to $650. How much does it actually cost?
Right now, it costs about $624, I think, but it's varied.
Yeah, they're like 600 and change. Yep.
Okay.
That 2,000 estimate, did we just grab that from a couple of different scenarios and came up with kind of an average, or is that,
Correct. That's why it helped us as an information point for the developing the incentive.
All right. So now, just to make sure I understand, so this payback calculation is purely illustrative, because there will be no charge for the installation. Because if I get an EV you guys aren't going to do the installation for something around 2000, right? I'm still going to do this myself.
Correct.
Okay. I thought this was I thought you guys were charging for the meter. That's, all right, that's
No.
fine. Now, at least I understand.
So yeah, so looking back at the payback, it's for the average case, it could be 5.6 years, assuming yes that you're charging all of your car off peak, which I mean, with the benefit, hopefully that would be the case. But if you have a longer or higher ranged vehicle, the payback could be 3.5 years. It could be, if you have 2 vehicles, then I mean the payback could be maybe 1 or 2 years, depending. So that's variable per person. So I think that's what's good about having two. This is like a higher commitment program versus the connected homes, which is a lot lower commitment. You sign up, they notify you. So I think it's targeting both different types of EV drivers, and I think that's a helpful piece there. So I think the benefits of this program, I mean, the customer obviously is going to save on their monthly bill, and then we talked about the 3 cent per mile EV charging cost, and then in comparison to the 5 cent per kilowatt hour if you were to go on our just regular flat rate. It supports our load management and monitoring, and obviously we get the avoided transmission and capacity costs, and then also easily accessible charging data. So the next couple slides are just going to be talking about the small multifamily EV charging kind of hot topic scenario. So there's not a one size fits all approach to these scenarios. I mean, luckily we have a consulting agreement with Voltrek, and they're pretty awesome. I meet with them regularly to discuss, various things if topics come up, and they're always there to do site visits or to consult with customers if they have questions for us that we don't have that expertise in. And I think ideally we would offer small multifamilies the new rate structure if they have the separate meter. And then the last slide with information is it was just a cool graphic that Voltrek provided for multifamily EV charging and all the different steps and the different players that goes into and how complex it is of an issue, like who needs to be involved and the different steps that go into putting an EV charger into a small multifamily residence. But that's all I got for you. If you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer.
I mean, it seems to me where we're going to be cutting our teeth on this, if I read this all correctly, is with the new construction. If it's required to do the extra meter and they're doing TOU, then that's where we're going to be doing the initial kind of customer education and learning on this.
Mm-hmm. And there may be, again, depending on, the scenario, maybe the electrician and you can get it done cheaply or whatever. And then there may be people based on their current situation that it makes perfect sense for.
Joe, can you back up just to the one slide, and just it's kind of more commentary on the importance of, some of the new codes coming with the stretch code and the opt-ins code with the around EV ready and EV capable. The cost of installing is exponentially cheaper to make it ready during new construction versus trying to retrofit. I think that's true of anything, but it is fair, holds very true with EV here, because especially in the multi-units, you've got to go back to the meter for each unit, depending on how the building is constructed. Obviously, running all of that conduit and capability at the time of design and build is exponentially cheaper. So I think that it's just something all of us to kind of be aware. And I know that there's, you know, the new stretch code and opt-in code coming at the end of this year.
I mean, we're already requiring on larger multifamily complexes that that they're set up for a separate meter for EV vehicles. You know, so we're doing that. We just don't have a rate to
Yep.
support it, but we have the option to change once it's approved, or if it's approved. You know, and that, you know, we'd want to apply that, to your point, Tom, we want to apply that to other new construction in town as well. You know, working with the building department to make that a requirement that a second meter for EV charging is installed on new construction. You know, the flexibility we need on existing construction, what everyone needs, but on new construction, you know, we can push to get that second meter installed, or an EV meter on the larger projects.
Agreed.
So I think what you just said is actually really important, because you're going to have situations where new construction is starting to get built and we don't have the rate structure in place. What is your desire, you know, seeing as we didn't vote on this tonight and we need more information in terms of getting our approval on the rate structure? When is the needed timing for that?
And
I
if
mean,
I
I
could,
think we
when
just-
would the meter? We don't even have meters. So both of those.
You don't have meters.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna get a time of use rate, we better get a whole bunch of time of use meters and get them installed.
No, we wouldn't install, we would install it into the new socket when it's put in. We're not gonna replace 12,000 meters with time of use meters.
But
We
I
would
thought you
only-
were talking about, you're talking about adding a time of use meter. So there would be a regular house meter and there'd be a time of use meter for EV charging.
Correct. But we would
And
only
you
put it in
have-
the places where somebody put a socket in.
That's what I'm saying. So the question is, when do you really need for you to do what you're proposing? When do you need a decision? And two, when are you going to have all your time of use meters ready to go for this program to be implemented?
I don't know what the lead time is on the meters, but I'm not worried. I don't think that's gonna be the limiting factor, because it's just gonna be a 15-minute meter. I'm not really losing sleep over the delivery of that, because I don't think we're gonna get inundated with 100 of these in one day. I think we can get the meters pretty quickly. I think
We have some now anyways.
yeah. We've been doing the free charger giveaway for at least 3.5 years, and we only have 50, so.
I guess, do you
Alright, but-
have any new construction projects right now that you believe will be EV ready with second meters?
Not yet.
Okay.
Go into and just where I'm just trying to find out the book. Where's the list of projects in here? Would any of these that
Right.
we're already in planning stage, are we talking to them already? Why am I-
Well, they're different, because those are all multifamilies, so that's a different story. In the new construction phase, those are all multifamilies, those aren't single families.
And
So
I
we're
guess,
already
how are we
We're
requiring
requiring
that?
them to have a separate meter to begin with.
Okay, but as a utility, how are we how are we enforcing that? How is that, statute, building code being enforced?
Interconnection agreement.
Okay.
So on a multifamily, they don't just come into town and drop a multifamily, and we're working hand in hand with each one of them. And Dave and Vinny have implemented the rule for the past handful of them since we discussed it a few months back.
Okay.
All right, so I mean, I guess when I was thinking about getting meters, I in my mind, I was thinking about meters for everyone, including the large multifamily. So I guess if they're going to have a separate meter, even that separate meter would end up getting switched over to time of use. Is that what you're proposing?
If they choose to, the original, we don't have a time of use option yet. If we were to develop one, the whole idea of requiring the separate meter was that if we were to develop an option, but again, it wouldn't be mandatory. So the building owner that had the separate meter, whoever's paying for the separate meter, could decide if they wanted to go on a time of use option. But as Jen was saying, the reason we're requiring it is to be quote unquote EV ready in construction on new construction is because it's never cheaper than doing it at the beginning. If we decided next month that we didn't want to do any of the time of use option, we'd still have a separate meter at the big multifamilies that we could use for data purposes.
All right. So I think Jen's question still wasn't answered about how quickly you need us to act.
I don't think there's a clock on it. I think it's when you have enough information that you're comfortable, so I think the next key step is we'll get you the spreadsheets that were behind some of this. And if you have questions over the course of a month, then we can revisit it next month if you're ready.
That'd be great.
I think it's an expansion of our offerings, basically. So I think, and it's I think as we've understood, Jack, when we talked with you and Voltrek, I mean, and this colored chart that we're looking at right now kind of tells you that the issue's still pretty complex. And, we may stub our toe and decide that, well, for example, a good example is that I think, as Tom said earlier, this separate program for the free charger for 3 years without automatically putting them on connected homes is a pain, and it's a problem. So I think we need to make that the default rather than waiting for people to drop off the program and try to recruit them to come to connected homes. We should be making that part of the program right from the start. So.
All right. I had another question, which is on that information session we were thinking about having for these small multifamilies. I know we kind of thought maybe we could do it in October. That's going to be way too soon. I think we need more time to flush some of this stuff out before we do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely push it later, especially if we think that we could have a rate that we all agree to, later, if potentially after the October meeting, then it would be worth pushing that.
Can I ask
And there
for, oh, go ahead, Jack, sorry.
I was just going to say there might be grants too that, additional new grants, for EV charging in that Inflation Reduction Act. So I don't even know what's in there in terms of incentives for EV charging.
For the next board book, if you could just, and just could be a sample marketing material, what it might look like to the customer around this program. So what that would look like, if this was to go forward, how would that look like as a marketing material?
Yep.
So, and that might be helpful for us to kind of evaluate it as well, if we kind of see the marketing material, like a one-page flyer.
Yeah. We're definitely gonna have to try to keep it as simple as possible because, we've already been talking about it for an hour and we're supposedly the experts.
Yes.
Yeah, one last question for me is, have you already ceased the EV load curtailment program? Or are
No,
you
we-
looking for us to vote on that?
No, we're not gonna cease it. We're gonna, like Tom said, we're gonna change the agreement so that it automatically moves you over to the next, to connected homes.
But I
after
was,
the 3 years.
yep, but what I'm talking about is for new customers, we would no longer offer that program. So has that already happened, or are you looking for the board to vote on that?
No, well, because I don't think that's true, because new customers, we're not gonna, if you have new construction and you've built it for the capability to have a time use meter, we're not gonna say you have to do that. You would still have the option to go the other way.
I think we might have missed each other on that. I just meant the existing load curtailment program. Is that
Yep.
still in effect at all right now?
Yes, but we're gonna change the agreement when you sign up for that, that says after the 3 years, you automatically become part of Connected Homes.
Okay, so we're already phasing people into connected homes. Got it.
Correct.
Or do we have do we have a mechanism in place to reach the folks that are under the current contract as they roll off, to just introduce them into
Yes,
connected homes?
Joe and MWEC are already doing that, and I think
Okay.
they've already got 3 of them flipped over to Connected Homes.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's only, to me, it's only a benefit to sign up for that. I don't know why someone wouldn't, you have the potential.
Exactly, it's more just it's more the contact, because
Yeah.
especially if you've been kind of following the rules all along, you're like 95% of the way there anyway, so if you don't really change your habits, you're probably gonna qualify for the $10 a month anyway.
Yeah, so it only behooves you to sign up.
Correct.
I got just one last thing, which is on that question, Joe and Vinny, that question about how do we reach customers who have chargers? The only thing that really comes to my mind is that information should be available at town hall, because we all pay our excise tax. So the town knows what kind of cars we have. Maybe we can get that list and cross-reference it for what customers are already on one of these two programs.
So,
Yeah.
so I reached out to the town assessor, and because of confidentiality, they said that they couldn't provide the names. I mean, so that piece, I don't know if that is feasible. But that makes a lot of sense. I mean, maybe maybe I could see if they could give us just like a ballpark number of how many are registered in Wakefield, to know, like, all right, if we have X amount of people who are in it, how much further do we have to push? If there's 300 EVs in Wakefield and we have 50, how much further do we have to push? But if we already have 70% of the people captured, how hard do we push to get that last 30?
Yeah, the issue, the pushback that Joe got from our town is not unique. We're hearing that from every muni right now that is trying to be proactive about this, and they're getting the same pushback from their tax collectors or town assessors.
Maybe,
But
oh, go ahead, Jack.
it's the same thing as the low income rates that we were talking about months and months and months ago, where what we could probably do is we could go through the town, and the town could actually send a card or a little letter or something out to the owners of the EV programs and just say, hey, just so you know, we're not sharing your personal information with anybody, but we know that you have an electric vehicle and you have options with the light department. So, I mean, that's one option. So they reach out and, just like with the low income rates, the light department doesn't have to know what people are making, but those agencies that are giving out funds, they can notify the people that there are programs available from their utility. So it's the same kind of thing, but that would take some discussion with lawyers. So, but it could be worked out.
Yep.
It might
And
be
on that thread, I was going to say, maybe Mark, we add on, on the new customer enrollment form, just a checkbox, do you own an EV? Do you plan on owning an EV? And so at least we're capturing that data as new customers come in. I know it doesn't help us with existing, but at least new, we would have a few data points. And then we could potentially be proactive around that as well.
Yeah, that's easy enough. Yeah.
It also might make sense to have signage at our public charging stations saying, have an EV and live in Wakefield. Check out our incentives and rates here or something like that. We could direct people accordingly.
Maybe even like yard sign, like the yard signs with the 2 posts that you could just stick in.
Yeah, I mean, they could last over time if we just directed people to a website. It'd be harder if they change a lot. Yeah. And I'm hoping one day dealers will be a good partner. They're not there yet, and it might take time, but
Well,
ultimately-
that's the other thing behind this is the fact that the supply of electric vehicles is still very limited, so.
Yeah. But ultimately, when they do show it more of an interest in these vehicles, I would hope that ones can say, what town do you live in, and have some information at the dealer on who to contact.
Okay. All right, so we'll get more information for next month and keep going.
Well, it's a great start, and it's a hairy topic. There's a lot to it, but I really do appreciate digging in, and I think we knew it was going to be it's going to be a process to get something in place, but it's a good process. We need to go through this.
In terms of the next piece, the board meeting topics, I incorporated what we had included in our discussions from last month and just kind of laid out for the next several months. But it was also time to talk about meeting back in person again. We had said we were going to talk about that.
Yes, so the question came up, should we start to meet in person again? And we've been hashing this out for a very long time about whether to do so. So I just wanted to get everyone's thoughts on whether to make a change as early as potentially next month. And I think, for me, and I think I've heard other people say, I still do think it's very important to maintain the virtual participation for our customers and others that don't want to be in the room with us. So that would be, my interest would be contingent upon making sure that we can maintain that, because I think we do get more participation that way.
I agree with that. Yeah, I have that same, I would like to continue to at least have Zoom as an option for folks to come in remotely, in real time, and then also for recording purposes as well.
We have installed a capability in the conference room. I hope it's adequate enough. I think it is. We've done some meetings over it, so I think we do have the ability to put our, put guests up on the screen, and I think we do have that technology. I guess my one concern, and I shared it with Jen, and I'll repeat it, is that our meetings are the first Wednesday of the month, and which means it comes immediately after the Thanksgiving holiday and immediately after the Christmas and New Year's holiday. And I honestly don't feel we should meet in person on those days, considering the past 2 years, that's when numbers have spiked. So my preference would be that for the December 1st meeting and the January meeting, that we continue to do those remote, because the past 2 years coming out of holidays, we've had significant COVID spikes. So, and I don't think you would necessarily know for sure right away. So my preference would be that we do those two remote.
My comment, and I have no problem with that, meeting in person and having those meetings remote. But going back to the last presentation, I'd be remiss not to thank Vinny and Joe for the excellent presentation and putting that together for us. Thank you.
Agreed. Thanks, Phil, for bringing that up.
No problem.
We're not
I
letting them off
also
yet
did
because they're part of the
attend-
next one too, so.
I also did attend one of the union meetings remotely using conference room Zoom. It worked very well.
Do we have do we have guidance on board member participation? You know, if we are meeting, all board members need to be present, or I remember when I was chair, when we could do hybrid, the chair had to be present. But I don't know if we have updated rules from the state around.
So the state has extended it into the beginning of next year, so we could, you know, it would almost be the same as if we're meeting all remote right now, because we're gonna have the Zoom option for the public. So I don't think there's any requirement of where and when, because as long as the chair or their appointee is chairing the meeting, it doesn't really matter where they're doing it from. Going forward, if the suspension of the rules expired, then it is a little bit more restrictive. And that's when you return to the whole case of the chair has to be present and a quorum of the board, and then you can allow a board member to participate remotely. But there are more specific rules, but those rules won't kick in until the suspension of some of the rules for COVID end, I think.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know. I remember reading something that there was some, you know, different rules during COVID. So.
Yeah, and actually on that, I think it's important to state that I think Pete, you and I talked about whether there might be some exceptions made for your staff that's presenting to us to be able to participate or present remotely.
Yeah, it'll depend on the situation, probably. Yeah.
So not the entire WMGLD team might need to be in the room either, so.
Yeah, I like the personally, I like the flexibility, and I'm, happy to be flexible where, if staff want to be remote, if it's easier for commuting, whatnot, that those are all, I think, are acceptable as well.
To the
Well,
next
we
meeting
need
in
to
person then?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to call for October for sure. Does anyone oppose meeting in person in October? Maybe it would be a good test run.
Yep.
Let's do it.
I
All
do
right.
not.
If there are no objections, let's give it a shot, and we can, I think the other thing too on my mind is it would be good, depending what the date is, to be in person for the strategic planning meeting in January, and obviously that depends on how everyone's doing. But those meetings are just a lot easier when we can be face to face.
I think I was trying to read my notes. I think we actually moved the January meeting to January 11th for the strategic planning session. So that's a little more removed from the holidays. So and again, it can be a game time decision if people are ill. And I will repeat to the board what I tell my staff every single week at our board meeting. If you feel sick, please stay home. Please don't come and spread it around our office. And I tell our senior staff every single week. So.
Very reasonable.
Appreciate that reminder.
Just one quick thing, just speaking of October, I don't know, Pete, if you guys saw that Wakefield 101 is coming back and is scheduled for October 20th from 6 to 7:30 at the Civic Center. Do we have a table reserved? I'm assuming we'll have a presence.
Yep, we always do.
Okay.
Okay, are we good with this item?
Yep.
All right, and I do think the schedule is helpful in here to just see kind of where we are and be able to juggle some things around as we go. So I'm hoping we can actually retain that as we kind of move through the year. Okay, on to ARPA.
Mark, you want to lead it, or Joe, or?
So
Go for it. Sorry.
I'll just say a brief introduction on what we kind of worked on, what we kind of looked at and we kind of worked on. So we we really had a brainstorming session. We went back to the town's criteria, and you can see in the bullet, you'll see in the bullet points when Joey puts it up on the screen, that the COVID fund, the ARPA funds for COVID have to be used in connection with COVID. It's very, very specific kind of uses. So that's how we derived to develop the program high points, basically around that. And what we kind of decided to do, the other thing that funding agencies grant, what the grantor of the funds, in this case, is going to be the ARPA or the town. They always like to see that the community or the program that we're going to be offering, the program also has some skin in the game. So, and and Joey's going to kind of talk about that, the doubling of rebates and so forth, so that, just a 30,000, foot view. WMGLD will be funding part of the incentives, and also, the program will also fund it for, a double bonus, if you will, for some of the incentives. So,
Mark, why don't if we take a step back, because I don't know if everybody's read in on. So basically, the town has said that there are some additional ARPA funds available to us, and they were open to the ideas or different ideas for how those funds could be used based on certain guidelines. So that's like at the 10,000 foot level.
right.
There may be some money level, and I think Michael has also had some ideas, but Jen had mentioned that we should consider like developing some kind of proposal for those funds, and that's where this is coming from by way of background.
Right. And so I actually went down and sat with Steve Mayo and just, had a chat with him, and he was really open, like Pete was saying. I mean, he says, give me a proposal, so let's talk about it. So, so this is, and this is the form that this is going to take. So, if you want to take us through it, Joey, bullet by bullet. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Mark said, I think the program is designed to target the customers most economically affected by COVID-19 public health crisis. It kind of gives increased accessibility to some of the groups that are harder to reach, the lower income and renters. On the homeowner side, at first, double stated rebates for heat pumps, weatherization, air sealing, improvements. The ARPA money will be utilized to fund the increase over what we already offer. So it's like 50-50. In addition, double the rebates on solar panel installation, increasing the offer from $125 per watt to $250. And it's taken, you'll see there's a kind of a similar kind of strategy with some of these programs. And the third one, which is a pretty big piece, is partnering with Wakefield Savings Bank to offer 0% interest loans, up to 10-year loans, for some of the bigger projects like the heat pump, solar panel installation, and those kind of things. And so we're working with Wakefield Savings Bank to try to iron out the details on this specific program. And I think we would target loans up to $20,000 for that piece. So for the requirements for the lower income homeowners, we would use 60% of the estimated state median income. This is kind of standard for some similar programs. For instance, there's a program, Weatherization Assistance Program, and I think it's a federal program that kind of runs through the states as well, and that's kind of the threshold that's used here. Loan customers must be in good standing. I mean, that's kind of standard with most of our programs. And then obviously the program will be on a first come, first served basis, assuming that our proposal is accepted. On the renter side of things, this is obviously a harder piece to get to some of those people and in some of the energy efficiency areas, because they don't own the place that they're in. Obviously, they're just renting, so they have limited control over some of their energy efficiency measures. So we've talked with MWIC and they're interested with this idea is to do a tailored energy audit specifically for renters. So it's kind of like a stripped down version of what we have for homeowners, where you take out the heating system because you don't really have a say in that, maybe the appliances, but keeps things like the lights and certain elements like that. So included in these energy audits, we would be giving them an energy efficiency kind of non-invasive kit, which would include LED light bulbs, adhesive door sweeps, foam outlet gaskets, and that's pretty much the route that we're going to go. The requirements for this is you basically just have to be a renter to have access to this program, and then the limit would be one kit per customer per year. So if we go to the next page, this is the numbers, basically the numbers behind it, the program budget, and kind of what we're aiming for this specific piece. We think that the weatherization and insulation will be about 70,000 around there, estimating 20 projects. Heat pump installation, 30 projects of 37.5. Solar panels, 105,000. The 0% interest loans, 150, and then the renter energy audits, the increased cost is assumed to be about 75 per audit, and if 200 people kind of go through that, it'd be 15,000. So with the total program budget we're projecting is 377,500. So that's kind of the skinny on the program. So.
And when we prep the budget for for the town, we're going to ask that we can mix and match between budget line items. If if the solar takes off or if the heat pumps take off, we can move money from another one of the bucket line items into fund that. So it's kind of a bottom line 377,500, but that's kind of the starting point in the program budget.
Mark, on the rebates for the solar and heat pump, will we be paying those directly to the contractors to kind of lessen the capital outlay for those low income folks? I know that while the rebate is awesome, that we're doubling those, the capital outlay, even if for a 6-week period or might be too much to overcome. So if we could potentially pay that directly to the contractors and lessen that, we might enable some folks that might not be able to otherwise to do it.
Yeah, in the event that in the event that a loan wouldn't be used, right?
Yep.
So so I think those would be few and far between, because a low income person isn't going to have, like you mentioned, Tom, they're not going to be able to pull 10 or 15 grand out of their pocket for and then wait for reimbursement. So I think the program would necessitate operating that way. So
Okay.
That's how I would envision it, and we disperse it direct to the contractor. So
awesome.
There'd be some type of application process that milestones, and again, using the heat pump example, a boat is going to have their hands in it, so we'll know that it's been commissioned, and we can disperse the money. So.
And did we, and I don't see it up here, and I don't know if we looked at it or if it's too much, but Pete, I know you were there, and Jen, and Phil, the tariff on bill meter, there sometimes, well, not sometimes, requires seed funding. Have we looked at potentially looking at ARPA to put together a tariff on bill meter and use ARPA funds to seed that?
Yeah, I think our preference is to stay away from that. I described that program as giving me a huge popsicle headache, because I think it's got so many issues, and it's somewhat of a good idea at some levels, but there's about 1 million holes in it right now, and so I'd rather see them evolve it further before every time I've heard John's presentation, I walk away with 100 more questions than answers, and so I think this is kind of an entree into that without without
Having
taking
it.
that step. Yeah.
Okay, appreciate that.
So who would do the low-income screening? Would it be you? Would it be another organization?
So
Who
that
actually
piece-
requests the annual, whatever it is, gross annual income?
So that piece, Jen, it's almost a gimme because if a person, we would refer them to Leo. So if a person is already getting fuel assist, and that's why we use the criteria that's kind of outlined, the 60% criteria. That's the bar that a low income person needs to get to apply for fuel assistance. So if the person is getting fuel assistance, they would qualify for this program. So it's really kind of done for us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But not everybody, there may be many low-income folks who are not getting fuel assistance, correct?
There could be, but so what I would do is, my question to them would be, why wouldn't you be? And then if you're going to disclose your financial information to me, it'd be better off to disclose to them so that you could get a double, right? You get the fuel assistance plus you could participate in the program. So I don't really see that as happening because it's, I mean, it could, to your point, it could, but why would a person forego that assistance, I guess would be my question.
So would the kind of, if someone fell into that category that said, came to us and said, hey, I want to install solar under the low income to get the 250 per watt, you go and look and they're not on Leo, you would refer and say,
Yep.
apply for Leo. Once you pass, come back to us, you
Correct.
get fuel assistance and, you now qualify for the program. You've
Right.
checked our box. Is that
It's a double, right? So not only are you going to get, the incentive for the solar panels or the heat pump or whatever, you're also going to get a break on your, on your winter heating bill for fuel assistance.
Okay, and then with regards to the financing, does the savings bank have any requirements or limitations if they are getting a number of low-income participants in this financing program? Like, do they have any other needs?
Well, so the lending criteria is between, the financial institution, in this case, the savings banks, between the financial institution and the borrower. We don't get in the middle of that other than under this proposal, we don't get in the middle of it other than to make it interest free. So, the savings bank would say, okay, over the life of the loan, this is going to cost $5,000, whatever the number is. And that would be our role in it.
So we don't
Okay,
have
so
any.
they may still have a high credit score requirement, which might render a lot of these transactions unable to proceed.
Right, but I mean, on the other side of the fence, I mean, if you're, I don't know that it's the question would be, is it the utilities spot to be backstopping somebody with, 400 credit? And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, again, especially if the bank's not going to backstop, and why should the ratepayers backstop?
Yeah, so.
I believe there are programs that there is a backstop, and I would need to check into it, but yes. And I believe there are even some programs where, I don't know what the funding source is, but there may be a ratepayer funded backstop as well. Okay, but that's important to know.
And I'm assuming once the Inflation Reduction Act, all of this will dovetail into that as well. So the incentives and rebates on the different parts and pieces of that someone may qualify from both state and federal tax level. This is on top of that as well.
For now. So I mean, again, this is the start of a pro. Let's see how it goes, right? Let's walk before we run, I guess, is the kind of the focus on this. And we we see the uptake on it, and it's just shy of $500,000, between $250,000 and $500,000. Let's see how it goes. There's, so we're going to 250 a watt. I mean, it's the installed cost. I mean, and Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The installed cost is $3.
Yeah, it's averaging, the last time I looked, it's averaging like $2.75, $3.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
I think Mike had a question. I thought his hand or comment.
no.
Yeah, I'm going to give you my 30,000 foot view to start out. Basically, we were, the town council members, and your chair has alluded to this, we don't always get together because you got to be careful of the open meeting law, but we were, tasked with coming up with some ideas, just throwing out some ideas for ARPA. And I know that we've had one, just to give you folks the lay of the land, I know we've had one formal submission by CAT. I know that there are some ideas about doing some things over at the lake, working on studying for a path around the lake or something of that nature. I had brought up, the idea of trying to do something with senior or moderate housing, and I brought up a power idea. My idea just came out of my head, which was, looking at the possibility of maybe working with Gas and Light on a particular project, with a certain amount of funds, and I would have to talk to all you specialists to realize what that might mean. But perhaps to consider providing ARPA funds for a specific rooftop solar project, for example. And then with a quid pro quo on that being something like, well, half of the benefits of that get distributed to the ratepayers and the other half would be put into some kind of a fund where you would continue to do more of the same. That was just an idea that I floated. I had a brief conversation with your chair about various ideas, and I like what I see. I like what I see here, except that I'm, with my contact lenses in at age 64, I can't read it. So what I might do is, maybe take a closer look at it, and when I go in to meet with, with Peter and the staff, and we can talk offline about that. When we might do that, maybe even sometime next week. I think.
Mike, just a point of info, probably save you some time too. Our board book is on our website, and so you might be able to blow it up and see it even better.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's under the About Us section under the meeting schedule. You can see the board book, so you might be able to see it a little more clearly.
Right. And from what I'm hearing, one of the questions that did come up, which I think the chair has addressed, is, relative. I was curious as to how is means testing conducted, by a group such as yourselves. And it sounds like you've already got a pretty good avenue for understanding who it is that, that needs the help, which is great. Although maybe that's not catching everybody as the chair indicated. Maybe there's some others out there. I think we, my thought process is this sounds like a lot of money, but
Viagra for 2 years. I ate 6 muffins downstairs a while ago, and my cholesterol level is 305.
Okay.
Mike, I think your mute was off. Mike McCarthy, there we go.
There we go. I don't. Anyway, it's I think you could consider making a couple of different proposals. Like to sit down and talk with you about that.
Yep.
I don't think there's any. There's going to be competition for the funds, obviously, and the town council will have to ultimately decide, which projects to approve and in what amounts. So I don't think I would hesitate to, perhaps even seek more funding than you have on this particular pie chart, depending on, what you might want to propose. Because obviously, what we have is we have about 5 million in capital that we've designated for capital projects, and probably about 7 million total, 5 plus 2, that is as yet unspoken for. So for example, some of the means tested projects that you're talking about here, or helping renters, they may not really be out of that 5 million capital, they may be somewhere else. So there may be a couple of different avenues to approach here in making, proposals to the board. And I'm just suggesting that, maybe you want to do even more than what you have here. And maybe a specific project would be, a specific solar, a specific roof. We've got a lot of roofs in town. Might be something that could be considered as well. Anyway, those are just a couple of the ideas.
That's a great overview. Thank you for that. One thing that occurred to me, which could be bigger money and bigger participation, is would we consider reaching out to landlords of affordable housing? Or could we consider that within this program?
Yeah, I don't think there are any prohibitions per se. I mean, if you look at, when we talk about renters and what little might be able to be done for them, maybe the better approach would be to landlords, possibly. Have a specific program targeted towards landlords for the, some of the same items, not the kit, but maybe the heat pumps and some of the other items that, we're really societally trying to promote. Another idea.
That's a good idea, to layer that in. There is criteria that says you're officially a landlord of an affordable housing unit, and maybe we could extend some of these benefits to them. I guess my only fear is there a way to guarantee that the benefit travels through to the true person that helps them qualify? You know what I mean?
Right, and go ahead.
I would say, I think you would see that from who the meter is being billed to, right? So if maybe the criteria is that the renter is responsible for the utility cost, because that, to me, that's the direct benefits to the renter. So if the landlord is certified as renting to low income, and then that the utilities are in the renter's name, because then at that point the renter is getting the benefit of the those efficiencies that have been put in place.
There are also, other possibilities that could be investigated. For example, and I appreciate Pete's comment there, because I'm not sure what the answer to a lot of these questions would be. But for example, if you are already part of housing, for example, Harts Hill, or, the building over on Broadway, I don't know how the rental situation works. If it's all inclusive, then it might not be a situation where you could carve that out. On the other hand, if you're in a housing unit where, you are being billed for utilities, that could be a separate story, or a little bit easier to identify, the benefits. Will the benefits flow to the individual?
Let me ask a quick question. For the renters, would they be low income renters or any renter?
The custom package that we put together with the enhanced audit would be for any renter. So that could apply across the board, because then it eliminates the need to have criteria, and it still has, it's an enhanced program, but it has benefit across the board. Because again, what we're trying to do is reduce energy usage, so there is benefit there.
And my understanding from Steve and Tom Mullen has been that, the final use of the ARPA funds, it's perhaps not as strict as, for us as as perhaps the original regulations were, the final regulations, at least from what those lawyers tell me. I'm a lawyer too, but you know, I go to Tom Mullen and Steve when I really, you know, want to get the skinning. Is that, you know, there's a fair amount of flexibility here in terms of, you know, the money that we have left and the ability for us to tailor the uses. And obviously anything, if you put something on a roof, you know, a roof that wasn't owned by the town, if it was owned by a separate entity like the housing authority, then that creates another level of, you know, involvement. But I
Yeah,
mean, I know we
I
do.
think there's this, that might, the solar on the roof of the housing authority or another location would have an immediate benefit back to those customers potentially. But I think in terms of this program, Mark and Joe and I could talk a little more tomorrow about, I'd like to explore that idea of the low income landlords, a way to potentially add this in so that maybe we do touch, there's a way to touch the renters to some extent.
Right, and we have moderate income units going into every 40B project in town, and I don't know whether those are easily identifiable or whether they're separately metered. I imagine they might be.
Yeah, I'm curious how you know if you know what that reporting is. That, you know, if I'm a landlord and I rent my unit out to a low income, I have to report that somewhere. Because I know my neighbor in the unit next to me, he was renting his unit out, and he rented it out to some woman on Section 8. But I don't know that the town would have known that.
Good point. I don't have the answers to these questions either. It would take some digging. And if we run into a wall of the privacy wall, then so be it. It is what it is. But there may be, you know, do you have to dig through the registry of deeds? That would that wouldn't be a great way to go.
I mean, would it just be as simple as Pete? And I apologize. Whatever program the landlord, you know, is applied for or a member of, you know, showing that they do rent to low income, and I'm sure that, you know, the state has requirements around that. Is just something we can, you know, say you need to be part of that program in order to qualify for this.
Yeah, I agree. I think, well,
Yeah.
Mark and Joe and I will dig a little more into that piece of it, because I think there may be some opportunity to touch more people. The whole idea behind the way we structured this was really a comment Jen made, you know, several months back, I think, as we were starting to kick around ideas similar to this, which is you could always try to find a way to give cash to a customer who's a little behind on their bill, but it's more important if we try to figure out ways to reduce their bill to begin with. And I think that was the thinking and the goal behind this. If we can help them overall reduce their bill, then it's better than, you know, giving them $50 this month to help with one bill.
I think it's a great idea, and, you know, promote the goals that we're trying to promote, as well as at the same time have a you know, a larger societal benefit, the best energy being the energy you don't use.
Yeah, I really like what I see and would love to see. So the renter just feels a little bit just short a little in terms of the offering. So that's why I wanted to kind of get to that kind of low income renter or landlord to see if we could really do a little bit more there. And I want to make sure, I guess, because all of this is contingent on financing. So what in my questions, what I was trying to get to is just making sure that that financing would actually be available at the end of the day, because if it isn't, this isn't going to cover kind of the entire cost in many cases. And so that's, you know, we just want to make sure that those people at the end of the day could get financing for the remainder that they still bear the cost of. And, you know, if we need to do a little bit more there in terms of providing a contingency, that could be done, I think, and probably wouldn't be too challenging to figure out. So I just want to make sure we don't short sight, we don't overlook that. But I really like this. And I think the other thing that I wanted to just say is that I don't think that it's the WMGLD alone has to figure out the eligibility and all the criteria. Like, I'd love to see us partner with the town and town council and folks that work with, right, low-income individuals to figure out how we identify and who we prioritize. Because I think that would be a great role for the town to help us out with. So I hope that we put some ideas forth in terms of the data we have available, but we also leave it open for people to give us help and ask for help, because we will need it.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of people out there who would be low income according to these eligibility guidelines, but who aren't receiving assistance. I'm sure of it. I know people, so but they might be interested in weatherization or solar panels. You never know. But I do wonder, though, this heat pump installation number of 37,500, that sounds like a pretty low number for 30 potential projects for heat pumps. Just curious.
So the other thing I kind of mentioned, Jack, was that we're going to have the ability, we're going to ask for the ability to kind of shuffle within the budget within line items. So, we'll be able to do, if the uptake for heat pumps is more than solar or something, we can kind of mix and match. So that's kind of the intention with this program. So again, ballpark numbers, we don't know what the uptake is going to be.
And Jack, because it's being based on per ton, the average system probably is, between 2 to, on the high end, 5 tons. Probably landing in the middle. But the incentive is a little bit light
30,
in my mind for,
30,
oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying it's 37,500 and it's 30 projects. So that's just a little bit over $1,000 per project budgeted. That just seems like a low number.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
But
so
I think the interest.
So I guess the
interest looks.
No, you go ahead.
No, and interest looks high. So the fact that we can shuffle money makes sense, because I think it'll have to happen.
Based on Mike's feedback and also like potentially adding in a layer that may include some mechanism for getting to low-income landlords, the number might go up a little bit. So.
This might be a question for Michael, but when do the funds need to be expended? So if we were to launch this, get approval to launch this program, how long would people have to act and install this equipment?
I think our committing the funds is something that's supposed to happen. I'd have to check with Steve, but I mean, he wants action on this soon. I would imagine it's, between 2022 and 2023. I'm not sure if it goes as far as 24, but I think if we commit the funds as town council, I don't think that necessarily means that you have to spend every dime, but we can check with Steve and Tom Mullen on that. And if heat pumps is low, we can always increase that. You can always increase that amount. I mean, maybe it goes through, maybe it doesn't. We're certainly going to, like I say, there's going to be competition for funds, but if Jack's right and that number is really, I mean, I paid a lot for my heat pumps. I don't know which heat pumps we're talking about, but if $1,000, per project is too low, maybe we should increase that line item as opposed to, worrying about shuffling in the first instance.
We can do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll tweak this a little bit. We'll share it with everybody and try to get it ready for a package to share with Steve and the town council over the next week or two. I don't think we'll have time to bring it back to the board if we want to try to at least get it in, but I'll share with everybody, try to enhance it. Do we feel good about it at a base level right now? And then, I mean, it's basically, there's minimal risk for the light department at this point. And it's more of an ask, and maybe ultimately we get some feedback from town council that it needs to be tweaked a little bit. But I think if we look at the low-income landlord option and maybe tweaking heat pumps up a little bit, I think we can put together a decent package for a request or a proposal.
I think for sure. Pete, what do you think about a specific idea? Not enough time to think about it, to do a specific roof project on some town building or town-owned land, or, you know, or something like that in addition.
I think it's definitely, we've already done 2 projects like that on the water department roofs. I think I definitely like to look at the concept of doing it on housing authority, because that might be the most direct way to link the 2 benefits together. You know, I think if we do a project that is just on some generic roof somewhere and we try to return that to all the ratepayers, it's going to be it'll be very hard to manage and quantify. But if we could do a specific project for like the housing authority, and the benefit rolls back to the housing authority, you know, tenants or residents, then I think that it's definitely easier to manage than trying to do a solar project that we gave everybody a 0.0001 cent discount on their bill.
I get that, but you know, I do like the idea of you know, even if it's pennies on a dollar of giving something back to everybody. But I get your idea that this would be more workable, potentially workable. I mean, the housing authority, I believe, owns the building on Broadway, and it's pretty high up there, and I don't see a lot of trees around it, so that might be one option. I don't know how things look over at Harts Hill. You know, those are probably smaller units, but
Yeah, it's
anyway.
a little more speed over there, but we'll do an evaluation. We did a preliminary evaluation of a lot of town-owned buildings, but Dave and Vinny and I can revisit that and see if there's other buildings where we could try to generate something where there's a mechanism that's easier to manage.
I'm just as a you know, kind of I spur idea. I know this is E&E, but they did a thermal heat pump in Taunton for housing. I just put the link in chat, but just something what others are doing and what you know is possible.
Tom, this is a thermal energy?
So it's a heat pump. So it's actually a new heat pump technology. It's actually kind of fascinating. So it's a heat pump, but the head is the head does thermal. So essentially, the head has the ability to store 4 hours of either cooling and heating, depending on the season, and then the condenser can be shut off, say during peak, and then it can continue to cool or heat for those 4 hours, not running the condenser. So it's just an interesting project on a couple of fronts. One, it was done on public housing, and 2, it's using a newer heat pump technology out there as well. And so it's beneficial to the utility to be able to dispatch those as avoidance during peak, so they can shut those down but still provide heating and cooling during that 4-hour peak window.
One other thing I would mention is that Steve did also mention when I talked to him today that he seems to recall, and again, it's a school building, it's not a housing authority building, but he seems to recall that perhaps the Galvin, when it was constructed, there had been some talk of making that solar ready. I don't know what the status of that is, but I just throw it out there. Maybe it's another project in the future to think about. But I'd love it if we could, even in addition to what we have here, have a separate proposal to go with it. But that's just my thoughts.
We'll kick around some ideas for a solar proposal as well.
Can't hurt.
Yeah. I think our partnerships on the existing town building so far have been successful, and I'm not sure how much background you have, Michael, on the energy park, but part of that is that there would be large solar arrays on both the high school and the tech as well. That's part of the whole energy park.
Now, are you also doing a project where people like myself who have too many trees around their house could buy a piece of a project?
Yes, there's a project that's going on our roof, and it's been going a little slowly due to contract and what do you call it? Supply chain issues, but we will have a community solar based project on our roof, hopefully early next year.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what the piece of the pie would cost me.
Mhm.
You'll probably
how
know
about-
as we're debating it.
Yeah, right. Probably. I'll be plugged in. How about
Yep.
the Ludlow project? What I've read about that. What's the status of that?
That's going online this fall. The solar project in Ludlow, there's a few out there, but the solar
Yeah, the
project.
solar is. Yeah, the solar. I was curious about.
Yeah, it's slightly behind schedule due to the same reasons, but it's almost completely constructed. It's going to be going online in the next month or two.
Is there a required percentage we're supposed to hit, and where do we stand on that, or is it just a goal of green energy, for example, for?
So
Yes,
we're part owners of the project, so we have a percentage of its output.
Right, but overall, are we supposed to hit a marker?
So we'll
Yes.
be,
So this
Well,
is the legislation goals, I think, is what Michael's asking
I'm
about.
not sure. Yeah, so in terms of our goal to be non-carbon emitting,
Yes.
I wasn't clear on, were you talking specifically about the solar project or overall our goal to be non-carbon?
I'm sorry, I tend to jump around. My apologies. I had moved on to overall. Yeah.
Overall, so we're right now, we're a little over 51% non-carbon emitting. So the requirement by the legislation is that we be 50% non-carbon emitting by 2030. So we're there almost 8 years early. Ultimately, we have to get to 75% by 40 and 100% net zero by 50. So we're well ahead of that goal right now. And so we have a long-term plan to exceed the goal. But right now we're already over 50% non-carbon emitting. And the solar project in Ludlow is a small piece of that.
Great, super.
The way our, and I'll explain it too when we sit down and meet, the way the way we work with MWEC is they help us buy power, but they also develop projects, and we take, sometimes we take partial ownership of those projects, like Berkshire Wind. We're 9% owners of the output of Berkshire 1 and 2. And so similarly, we're part owners of the solar project out in Ludlow.
Got it.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
We're probably going a little slow here. I think I included the current year-to-date goals. Usually we like to check in on that. I'll try to go through it quickly because we still have a lot of more stuff to do. I think the most important thing is to talk about a few of the things that we're potentially behind on. And I just mentioned one of them, community solar, is running behind due to, it took us a while to get the contract ironed out. And I think we still have a few issues with the contract with Amoresco, as well as some supply chain issues. The MAT in the capital plan, the MAT transformer replacements, we had two of those left. We're not going to get to those this year. We accelerated a few other things, and I think some of the work, obviously, that we've talked about in other meetings that Vinny's been doing on 4KV, and a few other issues. There's some newer projects that have weaved in around the new work on a big project on North Ave to create a bike path. So we're going to be relocating poles along North Ave. You're going to see work starting on that pretty soon. And obviously the energy park and the public chargers at the head of the lake are things that have been taking up a little bit of our time. On the gas side, we did get delayed on some of the capital work, and Jack, this might be important to you. We're not, the customer up off, I think it's Shumway, we're not going to get to their conversion this year. Based on the town's paving requests, we had to modify, and we actually had to add about 3 streets that were late additions and some conversion work that we did. So we're not going to get to that conversion of that dead pipe until early next year. So I think that's, we'll be obviously communicating with those customers in advance of when we get up there. You'll see us.
Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm going to ask you offline about that, but you might want to also just let them all know that the plans change and you won't be doing that work as envisioned this fall.
Yeah. We can do a,
No harm. Yeah, no harm doing it.
yeah. I think that, so you'll see us in large force down in the Cedar, Emerson area. That's where, so we had hoped to be at Cedar and Emerson at the end of the spring into the summer, and then continue up Prospect and then head over to the Shumway area on, that was our plan, but we got derailed by a few streets that the town added, as well as conversions on Montrose, that we had to go much further down than we had originally planned. So that kind of took us off target for the summer. So we're just getting to Cedar and Emerson now. So that just in terms of our overall plan, I think some of the things that we've added in, obviously the lawn equipment was added, and I think that's been hugely successful. I think there's a lot of, we did add Voltrek as our technical guidance consultant, similar to Abode on the electric vehicle charging side. We still have to do a few of those sessions, public sessions on Zoom for customers. We did have one on connected homes earlier in the year, and we had talked about doing one on EV. We talked about it earlier tonight. We will need to do a big information session on the energy park coming up. And we also wanted to do one overall on the energy efficiency programs. So I think we'll work on that pretty soon. Trying to think. Supply will obviously be talking to those in the coming 2 months with gas and electric. We do that this time of year. Obviously, we all know costs have gone up. We're doing our best to hedge and manage those, and we'll have greater discussion in much greater detail with both Sprague and MWEC in the next 2 months. Supply chain is impacting the reduced fleet dependence on gas and diesel. We do have the general manager vehicles now hybrid. We do have an all-electric service van as well as an all-electric substation vehicle. We're still waiting for the pickup truck for the supervisor and the bucket truck. We were hoping to have the bucket truck in September. That's looking more like the end of the year now. And we don't have a date on the supervisory vehicle. And so again, those have been affected by supply chain more than anything, because we're ready to go on those. We are planning to add an additional service van next year. That part of our fleet changeover has been very successful. And we'll have the chargers in the building. We already have 2 online, and we're going to have a level 3 in the building online very soon, as well as 2 additional level 2 chargers. So we're, from an infrastructure perspective, we're in good shape. I think we're just waiting for the equipment itself to arrive. You may have seen in front of the building, we changed the transformer that serves our building. That was for two purposes. One is to feed the load of the new chargers, but also it was necessary for when the solar project goes. So you might have noticed that in the front of the building, the transformer got changed out, and there's different landscaping in front of that now. Mark or Dave, can you remember any other main issues of things we're either ahead or behind on?
Yep. Bullet point 3B on page 4. Cash position.
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk about that or?
Well, I mean, I kind of led into it. So obviously the cash on hand issue is, obviously been impacted by our costs right now. So we've tried to avoid.
Trying to temper the increases on the customer bills at the expense of the cash. I shouldn't say at the expense of the cash position, but right.
Yep.
So that's kind of the why behind it. So we've been a little bit behind on that goal. So
Yeah, and I think you covered everything, Pete.
Okay. Any other questions? This is usually more just a mid-year check-in to see as priorities have changed throughout the year. And they can change for a variety of reasons. Obviously, I've mentioned, supply chain. The town has some different priorities sometimes, so we try to work and adapt with their priorities. And so I think, we've been able to shuffle a little bit. So I don't know if anybody else has any specific questions about the mid-year kind of check-in.
Well, there was one thing, Pete, just on the substation was the mini splits that we're putting at BB. So it'll carry over to next year.
Mhm. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I know we still wanted to go into executive session for a couple of issues.
Yes. Anything else for general session before we go to executive session? Because at this point, we will need to say goodbye to you, Mike. Just so you're aware. And any
Yeah,
others who are on.
I figured that.
Just want to say thanks, everyone. It's been lots of good discussion and great updates. So appreciate the work. I know it was a long session, but we took the month off.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I'll be
Thank you, Mike.
meeting up with Pete and company hopefully sometime next week. We'll work out a time.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Drop me an email and we could schedule a time, have you come in.
Sounds good. Thanks a
Great,
lot.
thank you.
Super. Okay, so I'm going to need a moment of coaching through this because I haven't done it in a while. So I need to vote to close the regular meeting and then vote to go into executive session.
No, so what you'll do is you ask for a motion to go into executive session and you'll say, and we return to regular session for the purpose of adjournment only.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session and we'll be returning to regular session for adjournment only.
Move the
Anyone make a
motion.
motion? Okay,
Do I have a second?
I'll
Okay.
second.
that.
okay, we'll go to vote. Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Corsi,
Aye.
Commissioner Calais, aye. Commissioner Prifty,
Hi.
Commissioner Warshaw.
Aye.
Okay,
Great. All right, so Vinny and Joe, I think you're gonna drop off. Sylvia, you probably can too.
I want to
Actually,
stop the
Sylvia.
recording.
Yeah.
See you, Joe. Thank you.
Bye, Joe. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, I'll stop the recording. Hold on.